Hello there, I'm Jimmy Vegas, and in this mini Unity tutorial I'm going to show you how you can create a player glowing trail path. This tutorial is sponsored by John Games, so if you guys are looking for a channel with plenty of content, gaming and creativity, John's channel is the place to go. You should probably check out some of his socials too and stay up to date with all his latest content. Loads of stuff to see. You can find all kinds of games on there, some Grand Theft Auto stuff, even a couple of tutorials that even I haven't covered. If you fancy being sponsored in one of these tutorials, just like John Games, all you need to do is click that join button below and become a sponsor. Now, on with the tutorial. Don't forget, click the subscribe button and click on the bell icon as well to stay up to date with every tutorial that I upload to my channel on video game development. There's always loads to see, loads to learn, and loads to do. With that in mind, let's get to work. So firstly, let's establish what is a glowing trail. Well, it is exactly as it sounds. It's a trail that follows behind your character to show you where you have been. If you want to see an example, perhaps look for something as you would see in maybe the Fable games or something of that type. Basically just a glowing trail to show you were all the way over here, and it eventually fades out over time. So there are a couple of things that you need to make sure you have before you can do this. You will need at least a scene where you've got something built up, and you'll also need a playable character. And it doesn't matter whether it's third person or first person, both will work exactly the same way in this tutorial. I'm going to be using a third person character. You can see she is right here. And to do this, we need to create two scripts, and we also need to create a particle system. That particle system is going to act as that little glow that will eventually fade out. So let's start by creating that particle system. Let's go to Game Object, and let's go to Effects, and let's go to Particle System. And by default, it will look like this, but that's not a problem. We just need to change a couple of the settings over here to make sure we have it set up correctly. So let's untick looping because we don't want it to continually loop. We only want it to play once. And we need the start lifetime to stay as roughly whatever length of time you want your glowing trail to stay active for. I'm going to keep it as 5 seconds. So each orb will last about 5 seconds before it eventually fades out. Speed is going to be 0 because we want it to be stationary. Start size you can keep as 1. You can have as 0.5, you can have as 2. It depends how big you want it to be. Next we can change the colour. You can keep it white if you want to, or you can go for a nice kind of pale yellow colour. In fact, yeah, I'll keep it as a nice yellow colour. And let's go further down. What else are we going to need to change? Don't think we need to change anything here in its simplistic terms anyway. Let's go to Emission. And the rate over time we're actually going to set as 0. The reason we're going to do that is because we're going to create a burst for this. So what we need to do is click on the plus and it'll already be set. Just make sure it is set this way. The timer 0, count 30, cycles 1, interval 0.01 and probability 1. And what this will do is it will make the particle system basically instantly appear. If you don't have this burst set, it'll look like it's having a bit of a delay when we activate it. So that's why we have the burst. Shape. Now, this is where it depends on what you want your shape to be. The best way to do this, if you want it as an orb, is to select sphere as the shape. Select the radius as 0. Obviously, it won't quite go to 0. It needs to be a little bit more. But if you set it to 0, it will increase just a little bit. And everything else there should be fine. The last thing that we need to set up in this is the size over lifetime. And what size over lifetime will do is it will make the orb disappear after, well, however long you've got it set for up here. So let's click on this little graph here and let's right click, add key, and let's set this first key all the way to the top, this second key somewhere around about here, and the final key all the way down. So this little one up here means that that is on completely full. It is perfect size, the size we want it, and down here is a 0 size, so it's non-existent. So the size will fade over that lifetime. You can move this around, this key, to determine basically how you want it to look. You can also add extra keys if you want it to give a bit more like this. You could make it start fading out, but then it comes back and then fades out again. It's just entirely up to you how you want your orbs to look. So when we have that set up, let's change the name of particle system to just orb. And next thing we're going to need to do is write a script, which will basically mean whenever we move our character, we spawn an orb. So let's right click, create C# script, and we'll call this drop orbs. And let's open that up in Visual Studio. Now, the way we do this is we're going to add 3 variables. The first variable is going to be the orb itself. The second variable is going to be the location of the player. And the third variable is going to be a Boolean, which is going to say, are we currently placing an orb or not? So we can get rid of the annotations and the start method because we do not need those. And we'll start by declaring the orb as a variable. So public game object, that's a capital G, capital O, as always. And we'll call this glow orb, semicolon. Next, we will declare the player. So in this case, it's going to be public transform because we're going to use the coordinates of where the player is to basically instantiate an orb. And we'll just call it player. And finally, we're going to have that Boolean. So public bool, we'll have placing orb, and by default, we will make it false. So how do we go about doing this now? Well, the way we do it is we're going to detect whenever we are moving our character. So my character is set up to move using the WASD keys, W-A-S-D. So W is always going to be forward. So that is when we're going to want to drop an orb to create that trail. If you have a different kind of character movement script set up, you would just need to do that. Whatever you have as moving forward, you would have this set up in your key code. So let's go if and input dot get key. Like I say, if you have something different, you would just need to make sure that you have it set here correctly. But most of you guys, I'm guessing, are probably using the W key as going forward or upwards. And we'll have key code dot W, close bracket, and then double ampersand because we need this if statement to be is something true and something else. So in this case, it's going to be placing orb equals false. Close bracket and open curly bracket. And in this if statement, we need to instantly set placing orb equals true because that is what we're doing here. Next thing we need to do is create a coroutine. That coroutine is going to allow us to place an orb at regular intervals rather than just every single frame. So in this case, we say start coroutine, and in brackets, the name of the coroutine you want to be called. So, for example, I'm going to call it drop orb because that is the most sensible thing to name it. That's what it will be doing. It will be dropping an orb. So, drop orb. Open close bracket, semicolon. Next thing we need to do is write that coroutine. So let's go below our update method and let's type I enumerator and drop orbs. Open close bracket, open curly bracket. So what we'll do is we will instantiate a glowing orb at a certain position, which is going to be the player's position, and then we will wait for however long you want to wait and then reset everything so we can drop another one. So in this case we say instantiate, and in brackets what do we want to instantiate? It's going to be the glow orb. So glow orb, comma, and where do we want to instantiate it? We say new vector 3, and in brackets the X position, the Y position, and the Z position. So in this case, it's going to be player dot local position dot X, and for Y, it's going to be player dot local position dot Y. And before we go any further, I'm actually going to add a value to this. The reason being is sometimes whenever you have your character set, it may drop the orb too close to the ground, and I want it to hover a little bit above the ground. I will come back to this a little later in the tutorial to show you how it can be affected, but for now I'm going to put 0.5 F. So I'm going to add 0.5 to whatever the Y value is. Next for this, we need to say player dot local position dot z or z. Close bracket, comma, and then quaternion dot identity. And that completes the instantiate. So what's that basically doing is saying that we want the glowing orb to be placed here. So semicolon at the end, and then we're going to say yield return new wait for seconds, and in brackets however long you want to wait before placing each orb. If you want a constant trail, you would have, say, 0.05. If you want a kind of a frequent trail, you have 0.01. If you want a very placed kind of trail, so every now and again it would seem, you can have this as 0.5. But you should probably work with this delay to whatever suits your own needs. So for now, I'm going to put 0.1f, semicolon. And finally, let's say placing orb equals false, because we finished placing the orb. And now we want to bring this all back together. So, in fact, we may need to change that to drop orb rather than drop orbs, because our script is called drop orbs. So we can't have that coroutine also called the same name as the script. So if you followed exactly what I've done, you may just need to change that to drop orb, both here and here. So let's save that script. And let's head back into Unity. Give it a second just to compile. So what we're going to do now is we're going to add a game object that will contain this script. And you don't necessarily have to do this the same way. You may already have a control object in your scene that you can drop this script onto. It's entirely up to you. But for now, I'm going to go game object and click on create empty. And I'm just going to drag and drop that orb script. The glow orb is going to be our orb. And the player is going to be the player. So I'm going to save that scene, and in its simplest terms, this will now work. So as we show this off to make sure it works, I will go through a couple of things. Firstly, we can see our first orb right there, and it's just disappeared. So what we'll do after this little test is we'll remove that from view, and let's go. So already we can see there is our glowing trail, and you can see it slowly disappearing as it comes all the way around to us. Cool. And same again. So you can see how regular these little orbs form. And that all comes down to the time that we wait here. So obviously if we change that to a higher number, they would form less regularly. So now let's assess this orb itself. Let's bring it off and below so it doesn't appear there. I am going to reduce the yellowness of this to probably about there. And I'm going to reduce the start size to 0.5. And let's now see how this looks in the scene. Next thing I want to address is how close to the character that the orb forms. It literally forms in her legs right there. Now, it's up to you how you want to do that. That could be fine if you want it to be. It's entirely up to you, but if you want to change it, you would just need to add the various numbers here. So for example, remember when I added this 0.5f? If I remove it and press save, head back into Unity and press play, you should see that the orbs intersect with the ground itself. So we can see. Doesn't quite look right when it's like that. So again, it's entirely up to you how you want it to look visually. It's your game, not mine. So let's set that back to how it was. And let's look at the local positions for the X and the Z. So they appear right in the middle of us. Let's say we don't want them to. We want them to appear behind us. So if we select our player and let's press W to go forward, you'll see that the trail is still not working correctly because we didn't save it. I just realized that now. So yeah, if you look here, you can see the player position. So you can work with those values. So let's save that script. And if I go to the player.localposition.z, whatever you want to call it, and say +2 and save, head back into Unity, you'll see something different happen whenever we move. So let's press play and see what effect we have now. You'll see that it actually appears basically not right at all. I mean, you may want that. That may be fine for you. So if we try again and establish where exactly that is, you'll see that it appears kind of in front of us, but not quite where we would like it. So again, it all depends on how you want it to look. So if we head back to Unity and head to our orb, we can change this one more time. And if we look at this, we can actually assess how the burst looks. I mean, if we set our rate over time to 1 and press play, not quite sure how this is going to look. Same kind of thing, so we don't need to worry too much about that. But you can see how the orbs are all spaced out. That's kind of cool. So, next thing we need to assess is the orbs themselves. Obviously, if we're in a scene and we're running around for a while, you know, we've ran all the way over here. We've got orbs generating en masse. It's looking kind of cool. So we've come all the way from over here, but those orbs are now disappearing. They've gone. But they are still in the scene using up resources. So how can we make it so as they disappear after a certain amount of time? Well, what we need to do is we need to attach an extra script to orb. So that's going to be a cleaner you could think of. So let's right click, create C# script, and let's call it cleaner. So it cleans up the excess orbs. Let's head into that script. And essentially what we need to do is we need to say, is the name of this object a clone? So we can go in our start method and say, if this dot game object dot name equals, and in quotes, orb, and in brackets, clone, and then close the quotes, close bracket, and open curly bracket, then we need to basically wait for, let's say, 6 seconds, for example. It may be shorter, it may be longer, depending on what you've created, how long your orbs are appearing for. And then you can just destroy it. So in this case, let's say start coroutine, and in brackets, I will say destroy orb, open close bracket, semicolon. Let's get rid of the update method and the annotations because we don't need them. So let's create a coroutine. So enumerator, and we'll call it destroy orb, open close bracket, open curly bracket. And it helps if I actually spell enumerator correctly, doesn't it? So what we'll do is we'll say yield, return, new, wait for seconds, and we'll say not 0.5, we want it to appear for longer, don't we? So 6. So after 6 seconds, we destroy, in brackets, game object, semicolon, and save. Now let's head back into Unity, and we just need to attach that cleaner script to our main orb. Oops, I'm moving the window there. So attach it to the orb. And if we scroll down, we'll see it down here. There's that cleaner script. And what this will do is any object that has the name orb clone that it's attached to, it will destroy. It won't destroy our original orb, so we can continue to instantiate it. So let's test this out. So there we go. There's our player trail. And it's starting to disappear. And you should see in the hierarchy, all the other clones disappear. So they are no longer in the scene. So that is a great way of getting rid of the trail once you have finished with it. And what I'd recommend with all of this is customize it as much as you would like to. You know, there's no right way or wrong way of doing any of this. Like At the moment, I am just quickly showing you different ways that you can do some of these things. Like if we change the drop orb rate to 0.01 and then take a look how that looks visually, you should be able to see multiple different ways of doing this. I mean, it's kind of cool. See, it's a very continuing line there. So yeah, I just say play around with this as much as you need to. You know, you can deal so much with this in so many different ways just by customizing a couple of different numbers here and there. And it is unbelievable what you can create with all of this. So I would recommend playing around as much as possible. So I hope that's helped you guys create a trail path for your character. And yeah, hopefully I'll see you around in another video. Thanks very much for watching, guys.